Good afternoon, book lovers. This is attempt two to do this book report. First time I got about halfway through and realized I wasn't recording. So anyway, the book is Erik Bulatov, and it's a catalog from a exhibit from a commission from Garage, which is a Russian contemporary art space in Moscow. So Bulatov, he he's still alive, an unofficial artist in the Soviet period, which meant that he didn't get paid by the Soviet government for his paintings like official artists did. And there are obviously, you could belong to the Painters Union, or you could be, in essence, a Sunday painter of a sort, and he was one of those. Similar to artists like Ilya Kabakov, or Komarn Melamed, and there's actually a ton of others, and there's a ton of really good books about them, including The Ransom of Russian Art by John McPhee, and The Experimental Group by Matthew Jesse Jackson, who is one of the best scholars of this period of Russian art. His art mostly consists of painted images with bold, emphatic, sans serif, poster-like text sort of overlaid on top of them. Obviously the text is in Cyrillic, so all these titles I'm giving you are translated from Cyrillic. Not that I can read Russian. They're highly graphic. They seem in some ways to be kind of a satirical look at Soviet propaganda. And his design style reminds me of like early 1920s era Soviet graphics, which was heavily influenced by avant-garde artists. And one that I'm going to show you an example of is Alexander Rodchenko from 1924, cover of a magazine, I think, called Kino Glas. And so you can see the typography, and that's the kind of the typography that Bulatov would adapt. Although Rodchenko never painted or laid his typography over painted images, as far as I know. It was either 100% graphic or it involved photography. But I've seen like lots of movie posters and stuff from the early Soviet period, and they all are somewhat similar to this. And apparently that look was carried forward from there, and was a common thing, and that Bulatov was intentionally making a pastiche of it for his own purposes. Rodchenko was never ironic, and Bulatov is, and there's no way to get around that. Although Matthew Jesse Jackson claims that Bulatov was not ironic, which I think is transparently incorrect. So here's one. Over here. Glory to the CPSU, glory to the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, from 1974. No communist was ever going to see this. This was done for himself and his friends, and it was clearly ironic. This sky opening up with this propaganda message obscuring half the sky, or unanimous here, where a group of people in a committee apparently voting, and the word unanimous on top of them, and that was the reality of the Soviet Union. Or here's one called Caution, and he did several like this, sometimes with the word danger, from 1973, where the word is implies caution, implies a warning, but is overlaid over a somewhat bucolic image, which that seems not political but ironic. sometimes he would take text from poems, like in this one, Black Night, White Snow, from 2000. And the line is from a poem by Alexander Blok, a great Russian poet. But he said in an interview in the book that he only did that once with like a well-known poet. He mostly used poems by a contemporary of his, and I'm gonna probably screw this pronunciation up. A guy named Vyacheslav Nekrasov, and so Nekrasov was clearly a friend, or is clearly a friend. I don't know if he's still alive, and dedicated some poems to Bulatov. Now, I've been fascinated with unofficial artists of the Soviet Union ever since reading John McPhee's amazing book about Norton Dodge, an American economist who was studying the Soviet economy and would travel to the Soviet Union frequently. And while he was there, he got to know a lot of these unofficial artists and made an effort to collect their work and carry it back with him to the U.S. Consequently, one of the biggest collections of unofficial Soviet-era art is here in the U.S. I think there's a Dodge Center at Rutgers University, which I've been wanting to go see for a long time. But of all these guys, except for maybe Komar and Melamed, Bulatov seems the most willing to pander. For example, the French government wanted to commission an artwork from him and Keith Haring, of all people, on the side of a blimp. And I'm going to show it to you right here. So in 1989, there's a anniversary of the French Revolution. And so he does this thing called perestroika. It seems, it might be unfair of me to characterize it like this, but it seems like he's thinking, well, what would the Westerners like? Perestroika is popular. And then this thing for garage, it's basically it was a commission that Garage gave him, and it's a painting, and it's one of these ones where it's not like a painted image, but the whole thing is painted, but it's all graphic, and it says "Welcome to" or "Come to Garage," with an exclamation point, and it seems like hey. It would be as if a well-known American artist was hired by a well-known contemporary arts museum in the U.S. and painted an advertisement for them. It seems a little bit pandery. Anyway, Garage. What is Garage? I mean, why is there a contemporary art space called Garage? Actually, I don't really know why they named it Garage, but it's in Moscow. I think it's in Gorky Park, so very central location. It was founded by Roman Abramovich and his wife, Dasha Zhukova, his ex-wife. They divorced in 2017. And Roman Abramovich is one of the most notorious of the Russian oligarchs. So it seems like your classic scummy reputation laundering thing, and it's easy for us to like look down at Russian oligarchs because they are inherently scummy. But really, how is this different from the Menino collection or any number of privately founded museums that show some rich guy's art? The Broad in Los Angeles, for example. So it's the Russian equivalent of the Broad. Anyway, let's talk about Erik Bulatov. He studied at the Surikov Institute, which is a big art school in Moscow in the 50s. And he was there at the same time as Ilya Kabakov. But Bulatov was studying painting, and Kabakov was studying children's book illustration. And I don't know if you've seen Kabakov's children's book illustrations, but he was really good. And let me. I'm going to read something that Bulatov wrote. That he wrote about how he was there. While he was there, Stalin died, and the thaw began, which was a loosening of the Stalinist grip over Soviet culture. And he writes, I led a battle to reinstate the former professors, ones who had been fired under Stalinism. Naturally, nothing came of this. They did expel me, but allowed me to graduate from the institute, although there could be no mention of a career. In any case, this was a very useful lesson for me. It became clear that there was no need to expect justice from the authorities, and one had to arrange one's life so as not to depend on them. That attitude is, from what I can tell, was very common amongst the unofficial artists, because they weren't dissidents like say Joseph Brodsky or Alexander Solzhenitsyn. So they might have had while those two guys had a political purpose in a lot of things they wrote, Bulatov and Kabakov and so many others didn't really have a political purpose, and what they didn't want to do is get in trouble for what they were painting. So they showed it to their friends in their apartments. As for Bulatov, he couldn't be a painter, as he implied in that bit, but he writes, on graduation from the institute, as I've already said, I had to organize my life so as not to depend on the authorities in my professional work. That meant I had to earn a living outside of painting. But how? After various attempts, it turned out that the best thing for me was to illustrate children's books. Ilya Kabakov, who had studied at the Surkov Institute in the studio for book illustration and was already a professional illustrator by the time he graduated, took me to Little One Publishing House and gave me lessons in illustrator's wisdom. So Bulatov, like Kabakov, ends up being a children's book illustrator, and I'm kind of curious to see his children's book illustrations. I'm going to read a couple more quotes from Bulatov. In the majority of cases, belonging to unofficial art, as he didn't really denote one's serious professional views. Rather, it was a matter of behavior. So, basically, it meant in unofficial art you could be a painter, a conceptual artist, a experimental artist, and let's see. He also writes, we all firmly believed that Soviet power would be there forever, and there was nothing you could do about it. But one could risk not having anything to do with it, to try to depend on it as little as possible, and in that way, liberate oneself from it insofar as possible. This was simply necessary for the artist. I find that fascinating. Here were these guys. They weren't samizdat publishers. They weren't. There's a famous incident from the 70s where a group of unofficial painters wanted to have an exhibit outdoors, not in a building someplace, but in a park, and they set up all their paintings on easels and stuff. And then the KGB came with bulldozers and knocked them all down. Well, Kabakov, and I'm not sure, maybe Bulatov as well, didn't participate in this because, he thought, who needs the trouble? I've got a thing going. I've got a good job as a children's book illustrator, and my friends come and look at my art in my apartment. So they chose, Bulatov, Kabakov, and many others chose to just wait it out. And Bulatov was saying, hey, I was willing to wait it out for the rest of my life because I didn't really think the Soviet Union was going to go away, but it did go away. And Matthew Jesse Jackson, in his book, The Experimental Group, which I highly recommend, about Kabakov, Bulatov, Moscow conceptualism, etc., writes that that's what they did. The Moscow conceptualists would have events in a park someplace, and really the only people who saw it would be their friends. There was one event that he described as one of the things they would do is they would make banners and string them between trees, and that would be the thing that you went to the event to see. So he made a banner, strung it, and he rolled it up, mailed it to a friend of his who lived way out in Siberia with instructions. And the friend had to go out in the woods, string it between two trees, and this is a huge banner too, walk like a certain number of paces away, take a photograph of it, and then take it down and send the photograph back to the artist. And so no one actually saw the event, the thing, except for the one guy who strung up the banner and took the photograph. It seems like, that kind of that would make it kind of suicidal, but it seems like really in the West, when I go to see like a show opening at a small non-profit gallery, let's say, well, really, it could be any small non-profit gallery. It'll be, the artist's family, and a bunch of friends. It won't be any more than the number of people who saw Bulatov in the Soviet Union in the 70s. And it'll be basically the same people, the same kind of people who are already into this. They don't have to, there's no risk. Now, admittedly, a cop could walk in off the street and see some weird art, but, artists are not oppressed in the West the way Bulatov and Kabakov were in danger of being oppressed. But, they face that danger by just not participating, not trying to have a public life for their art. And Bulatov seems like he was satisfied with that. But, as I mentioned, as soon as Perestroika and as soon as the Soviet Union fell, he was eager to cash in a little bit. If the French government wanted him to paint Perestroika on the side of a blimp, or if some Russian oligarch commissioned him to paint a gigantic advertisement for his private art gallery, Bulatov said, yeah, sure, whatever. I've got the chops. I can do it. I can do a great job of it. And he did. And I think he is an important painter. Anyway, I recommend this. Erik Bulatov, published by Garage. Thanks very much.